So here's what we're going to do. For the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about Wednesday night's game between the Orioles and the Nationals. And then once this episode is over, we are never going to speak of that cursed baseball game ever again. But it is coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Thursday, May 9th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, I am going to try my absolute best to recap what in the world happened in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday night. The Orioles coming up with an insane 7-6 win over the Nationals in 12 innings. I'll try to keep it to 5 things you need to know from that victory. Plus, we'll talk about the Orioles closer situation moving forward. And quickly, because I didn't have an episode Wednesday, we will recap the O's loss to the Nats from Tuesday night. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monopoly Go, the fast-paced game that lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So we start today with an unbelievable baseball game from our nation's capital on Wednesday night. Your final score from Nats Park is the Orioles 7 and the Washington Nationals 6 in 12 innings. The Orioles somehow find a way to win that game Wednesday night, continue their sweepless streak to 103 consecutive series without being swept, and split the quick 2-game series in DC after their loss on Tuesday. Again, apologies, no episode Wednesday, had some things going on, but we will get to Tuesday's game at the end of today's episode. But let's start with Wednesday. The 5 things you need to know. It's probably going to be more than 5. We're going to try to keep it to 5 things you need to know from that crazy win. And I know all you're probably thinking about right now is what the heck happened in extra innings. But to me, the first thing you need to know from Wednesday is that, remember when Kyle Bradish started that game and pitched the first 5 innings? Yeah, he looked pretty good again in his second start of the year, coming off the injured list. Now, after the partial tear in the UCL, he came back last week, gave the Orioles 4 2/3 strong innings against the Yankees. This time, he pitched even better in start number 2. Bradish on Wednesday night against the Nationals, 5 innings of 1-run ball, 4 hits, 9 Ks, and 2 walks on 90 pitches. And here's the most impressive part. Kyle Bradish, in 5 innings of work, did not allow a hard hit ball. Even though the Nationals had 4 hits on him and had some more balls in play as well, it was, 4 hits plus 6 outs in play. None of them were hit 95 miles per hour or harder in terms of their exit velocity. He was pretty dominant through 5 innings. Now, the reason he only went 5, well, it was a lot of strikeouts. His pitch count was up at 90. And remember, Bradish is still not even fully built up. He's still building up in the big leagues. His final rehab start in AAA was 75 pitches. His first start against the Yankees last week was 83 pitches. So this one built him up to 90. I said this already last week. But that next start that Bradish gets, which will be next week against the Blue Jays, I believe, that would be the one where you can probably consider him almost fully built up. If not, it would most definitely be that 4th start that he has. But for building up in the major leagues, it's pretty impressive. Now, I didn't have crazy swing and miss stuff despite 9 strikeouts, and that's what was so interesting. Usually when you strike out 9 guys in 5 innings, you're getting whiffs all over the place. And 12 whiffs is a good number. But he got a lot of called strikes as well. And what I thought was interesting from Bradish is how much he used his sinker. Something I've talked about a lot on this podcast is how Kyle Bradish became like another level of really good in 2023 when he realized, hey, my slider is my best pitch. I'm going to throw it more than anything. The slider became his number 1 most used pitch. For the first time, probably since 2022, Bradish's slider was his 3rd most used pitch on Wednesday. 42 sinkers, 21 curveballs, 19 sliders, and then 6 four-seamers and 2 changeups was the mix for 90 pitches for Kyle Bradish. Those 42 sinkers, that is the most sinkers he has ever thrown in any big league start. The previous high was 34 of them for Kyle Bradish. I mean, he was almost half sinkers, 42 out of 90 pitches. And when Bradish does something like that, that was in the specific game plan for the Nationals order, knowing that the guys he was facing were not going to hit his sinker well. He threw it up. He threw it on the corners. He threw it at the knees. It was a great pitch. 64% of those sinkers were in the strike zone as well. That is a pretty elite zone rate for that pitch. But when he had the curveball, when he had the slider, they were still nasty. He still got 5 whiffs on 12 swings on that slider, including back-to-back strikeouts of CJ Abrams and Luis Garcia, who have been the Nationals' best 2 hitters this year. Just filthy back-to-back breaking balls to get them out. As long as Bradish is still feeling good, feeling healthy, I am loving what I am seeing so far from him returning to this rotation. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Wednesday night is that the long ball played a huge part in that victory for the Orioles. After getting shut out for just the second time this season on Tuesday night, they came back Wednesday and started to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Anthony Santander got the Orioles on the board in the 4th inning against Nats lefty starter Mitchell Parker. A solo shot that he kind of hooked down the left field line. 109.6 off the bat, 416 feet for Santander, tied the game at 1. And then Gunnar Henderson got one off a lefty again. Parker was still in there. And Gunnar, 102 off the bat, 379 feet, a solo shot to right in the 6th inning, put the Orioles up 2-1. And it looked like that Gunnar shot was going to be the game-winning homer. Unfortunately, the Orioles needed more than that, but that was okay because Ryan Mountcastle, in the top of the 11th with the game tied at 5, with the game tied at 3, came through with a huge homer off his former roommate and one of his best friends in Hunter Harvey. Mountie with a 2-run shot in the 11th to put the O's up, 99 off the bat, 386 feet into the bullpen in left center field. The cool part about this is when the Orioles faced the Nationals last year, Ryan Mountcastle homered off of Hunter Harvey at Nats Park. And there was a big story written about it because of how good of friends they were when they both played for the Orioles and how Mountcastle was just smiling going around the bases. Well, it happened again. Ryan Mountcastle now 2 for 2 with 2 home runs against his good buddy Hunter Harvey. And the long ball played a huge part. But because the Orioles gave up multiple leads in this game, it wasn't the homers, but it was complete weirdness on offense that won this game. They went to the 12th. The game was tied at 5. Jorge Mateo leading off the inning with the ghost runner, or the zombie runner, I should say, on second base with nobody out. He squares to bunt twice and smartly pulls back both times because both pitches were out of the strike zone for ball 1 and ball 2. And then Brandon Hyde, a pretty smart decision, just says, hey, Jorge Mateo, 2-0, you're going to get a fastball down the middle. Let it rip. He does. He just fouls it off. But then he gets another fastball, rips it into left field for a base hit. Jordan Westburg scores to put the Orioles up 6-5. The throw from Jesse Winker gets away. It gets away from the catcher. Jordan Weems, the pitcher, the backup, tries to pick it up and throw Jorge Mateo out at second. He sails the throw into right center field. Mateo gets up and scampers into third base. And if he didn't hurt himself on the way to third, he might have been able to score on that throw into center field. Then it seems like Mateo is seriously hurt. And then he stays in the game, and with Cowser at the plate, a pitch gets away, and Mateo scores on a wild pitch to give the Orioles what ended up being a gigantic insurance run in the 12th. So you get all those runs off the homers, and then it's like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of weird stuff to happen. And the Orioles somehow found a way to win that game with that weird stuff in the 12th inning. It tells you Jorge Mateo is still providing value to this Orioles team. Now, the third thing you need to know from this Orioles wacky win on Wednesday is that Colton Cowser got his swing back a little bit. Cowser, who was coming in 4 for 35 over his last 12 games, was certainly in a bit of a slump after his incredible start to the year, AL Rookie of the Month in April. Hadn't been swinging the bat too well lately, but he had a nice little day at the plate. 2 for 4 for Cowser with an RBI sac fly that gave the O's an insurance run to put him up 3-1 in the 7th. He also almost had an RBI double earlier in the game in the 2nd inning, but Jordan Westburg on a nice relay got thrown out at the plate that took away an RBI from Cowser on that double. He also smacked the ball to the warning track in center field in the 12th for what would have been a sac fly had Mateo not scored earlier on the wild pitch, but still a hard hit ball. Now, Cowser wasn't without fault the entire time. He did lead off the 10th inning in a 3-3 game with the zombie runner on second and was not able to advance him to third, ended up striking out in that at-bat, and the Orioles did not score in the top of the 10th. But otherwise, Cowser's swing looked better, and it was a good night for him to get his first 2-hit night in quite a long time. Fourth thing you need to know from this one is that every reliever besides Craig Kimbrel, and we will get to Kimbrel coming up next, had a good moment in this game. Now, with Kyle Bradish only able to go 5 innings, the Orioles went to the bullpen early in this one in the 6th. Danny Coulombe got them a scoreless 6th. Yennier Cano got the Orioles a couple outs in the 7th. Cionel Perez came in and got the O's 4 huge outs in the 7th and 8th. And they got into the 9th for Craig Kimbrel. We'll talk about Kimbrel blowing the save, but although Keegan Aiken did give up what ended up being the game-tying single in the 9th, he got a huge out to get it to extra innings. And then the Orioles went to Albert Suárez in the 10th in a tie game with the zombie runner on second, and Suárez got them out of that 10th inning. The O's get the 2 in the 11th. They go up 5-3. Suárez comes back out there, gets the first batter out. You're like, he's going to smoothly get through this. Then he walks a batter, and then it's an RBI double, and then it's a sac fly to tie the game. And luckily, he got Abrams to fly out with the winning run at third to get the game to the 12th. So maybe Suárez can handle 1 high leverage inning, but maybe not 2 innings in high leverage. That was a lot to ask from Albert Suárez. I'm not super upset with him for giving up the runs in the 11th. That was a lot for Albert Suárez, who had only pitched in 1 other relief outing, and it had been basically in mop-up duty Sunday in Cincinnati. Hasn't pitched as a reliever in the big league since 2017, and certainly wasn't in high leverage back then with the Giants. So yeah, a lot to ask. It was the right decision from Brandon Hyde. That was the best reliever probably that he had left. But yeah, it didn't work out great. And then it was Jacob Webb, who still made it interesting, gave up a leadoff RBI double to start the 12th and made it 7-6, but retired the next 3 batters to somehow get his second just incredibly clutch save of the year to lock down that 7-6 win. After Webb threw a good amount of pitches in Tuesday night's game, you could kind of tell Brandon Hyde did not want to use Jacob Webb in this game, but he was forced to once it got to the 12th, and Webb still delivered with 3 huge outs. But unfortunately, the reason why this game lasted an hour longer, the reason why this game wasn't an easy, simple 3-1 win, the reason why this game got wacky and took 12 innings and finished 7-6 is because the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles win over the Nats on Wednesday is that Craig Kimbrel, it's not good right now. And, you know, we talked about the back-to-back blown saves against Oakland, how there was a back issue. He got some rest. He came back. He dominated Friday night in Cincinnati. Then Saturday night, I thought the stuff was still good, just was a little bit off. And then he got 3 days off, didn't pitch Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. And you're obviously going to go to him. You're up 3-1, bottom of the 9th. He's fully rested. You're like, this is a chance for him to look good again. And the pitch he threw almost hit Joe Meneses in the head, but he got Joe Meneses to pop out for the first out of the 9th. He got a line out for the second out of the 9th. And you got 2 outs, nobody on in the 9th, up 3-1. You're like, even if Kimbrel doesn't have his best stuff, which he didn't, this still should be a save. Well, then Eddie Rosario homers to make it 3-2. And then he walks back-to-back batters. And all of a sudden, it's first and second, 2 outs with C.J. Abrams up. And for the second straight outing, going for a save, Brandon Hyde pulls his Hall of Fame closer, Craig Kimbrel, with the lead still intact, but with less than 3 outs in the inning. Last time, it was Yennier Cano who came in and got the save in the 9th. Unfortunately, this time, I mentioned Keegan Aiken came in, gave up an RBI single to tie the game, then got Luis Garcia to ground out to keep it tied and send it to extras. Again, I was talking about a lot to ask from Albert Suárez. That's a lot to ask from Keegan Aiken as well. And Kimbrel's, it's a tough spot right now. Like, he did not have any fastball command. He had much better curveball command, which was good. He hadn't had that for a little bit, but just no fastball command. And you're like worried he's hurt, but the velocity was good. The velocity was even up on his fastball on Wednesday night. And we talked about over the weekend in Cincinnati, okay, maybe we just don't do back-to-backs. If he gets some more rest, he'll be fine. This was 3 days rest, and he was not fine. If he's hurt, IL him. Even if he's not super hurt, you still have that back issue from last week. That gives you enough reasoning to maybe just pop him on the 15-day injured list so he can reset, throw a couple rehab outings in AAA Norfolk, and then like rejoin you June 1st or something like that. Like, that's an option here. But they got to do something, because at the very least, I'm not sure the closer job, as the Orioles, have the off day Thursday, which the Orioles use 7 of their 8 relievers on Wednesday. It is very nice to have the off day Thursday. When they return home Friday to play the Diamondbacks, like, if it's a save situation, I'm not sure Craig Kimbrel is your closer. So the question is kind of, what do you do with him? And that's what I want to get to next. If Craig Kimbrel, at least for the time being, is not going to be the Orioles closer, what would have them make that decision? Will they make that decision? And what would they do as a replacement for him in the 9th? That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by DoorDash. We are so close to Mother's Day. It is coming up this Sunday, and DoorDash is going to be your friend for getting your mom something she would love this Mother's Day. You can get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. You can surprise her with really anything, and it's all in one place on the DoorDash app and delivered right to her door. So whatever she is into, you can get it for mom at DoorDash, and you can get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. And you just got to use the code Locked On MLB. That is code Locked On MLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock on really the mobile version of the hit board game. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers and cool playing pieces and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. And plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. That's Monopoly Go. Game on. So despite the Orioles finding a way to somehow, I literally, as I said at the top, I do not want to speak about that game once this episode is over. That was just a wild, insane, cursed baseball game. I didn't even talk about the fact that, like, what was Ryan McKenna doing out there in this game? He seemingly steals second in the top of the 11th, then overslides the bag and gets tagged out, loses the O's a chance to get another insurance run. Then on the sac fly that tied the game at 5 in the bottom of the 11th, he makes the catch in kind of shallow right field along the line and then like takes 2 crow hops before throwing the ball home, makes a bad throw, and the runner barely beats the tag. If he just gets rid of it earlier or makes an actual throw, it might be a double play at the plate to win the Orioles the game. And then the RBI double by Garcia in the 12th. It was a very tough ball to catch. But once again, he just took a terrible angle, terrible jump, terrible route to that ball and allowed it a better chance to be a double. He's not a very good baseball player. And Austin Hayes, luckily, is playing rehab games in Double-A Bowie right now. Hopefully Hayes, by maybe the start of next week, back. Ryan McKenna's the easy move, I think, when Hayes comes back. So hopefully that is resolved shortly. But back to what we want to talk about here in this segment, and that is Craig Kimbrel. It didn't look good. Even with 3 days of rest, it did not look good as he blew the save on Wednesday night. So the question is now, is he your closer? Now, I'm not sure, at least at this point, as I'm recording here, just shy of 11 p.m. on Wednesday. I'm not sure if Brandon Hyde has said anything specifically about Kimbrel in the closer role. He's probably not going to have a quote about it anyway right after a game. But at this point, I would pull Kimbrel from the closer role for the time being. Now, if he's open to it and you can do it, I would use that back issue as an excuse to just put him on the 15-day injured list right now, let him get some rest, let him come back, let him throw a couple rehab outings in AAA, then bring him back in June. That's what I would do right now. But whether he stays or not, I'm not sure you can put him in the 9th inning in high leverage, at least for a little bit. So the question is, okay, you're taking away the closer job from Kimbrel. We don't know it for sure, but it seems like it's going to happen. What do you do in the 9th inning? Well, the issue is the Orioles don't really have a true closer type on the roster still. You want a guy that misses bats, gets a lot of strikeouts. You're never going to get Felix Bautista. He's not coming back this year. You're not going to replicate him. So I think they would do what the Orioles did late in the year last year once they lost Bautista to the elbow injury in late August. It is closer by committee. Danny Coulombe has a save already this year. When Kimbrel was out, he'll get some shots. Yennier Cano, he just hasn't been as good in the 9th inning in his career, but he will get some shots. He's the best reliever in the Orioles bullpen. Cionel Perez got a couple save chances last year. I think he'll get some shots depending on matchups. Again, if there's heavier lefties out there, you could see Coulombe or specifically Perez. And listen, Jacob Webb now has 2 gigantic saves for the Orioles over the last 2 weeks. I think he could get some shots depending on matchups. The thing about Webb that's good is he gets righties and lefties out because that changeup is so good against left-handers. Albert Suárez could be in the mix even. I mean, we saw him in high leverage. He was warming up in the 8th to maybe protect a lead, didn't get the chance, but I mean, pitched the 10th and 11th innings in this huge high leverage spot in this game. Like that could be his role now that he's moved to the bullpen. And even Tyler Wells, when he gets back, could be an option. I mean, Wells, it seemed like was the number one closing option for the Orioles at the end of last year. If the Orioles would have been in a save situation in the postseason last year, I think Wells would have gotten that shot. He got to close out the division clinching game. But of course, he's on the IL right now. Now, Brandon Hyde did tell the media before Wednesday's game that Wells is currently throwing down in Sarasota, trying to work back from that elbow issue. So the fact that he's in Sarasota means it, we're looking at, I don't know, maybe at least a June return. Like it seems like it's going to be a little bit for Tyler Wells with the elbow issue, but he could be a factor when he comes back. But it's truly going to be a closer by committee for now. And I think whether Kimbrel was good or bad, the Orioles were going to add at least one relief pitcher at the deadline. They're generally very cheap. The Orioles have been willing to spend a little bit on relievers to bring them in. You can even get a guy who's a rental and you maybe have to give up like one mid-level prospect at best. Like it doesn't cost a lot at the deadline to go get a reliever. Now, if you want to get a legitimate closer, that's going to cost you a little more money. And let me just say it right now, Mason Miller is not the Orioles guy to have. He's on the A's. He's got like 6 years of team control left. They might still want him to be a starter one day. The A's are not trading Mason Miller. It's just not happening. Now, Lucas Erceg, their setup man, maybe that's a guy the O's could get there. The A's are not trading Mason Miller, okay? He's not just out there for other teams to have. Like, he is an Oakland A. But in general, maybe they have to look more towards a closer type at the trade deadline. Now, I still think Craig Kimbrel can be a useful part of this Orioles bullpen. Now, his role at this point at 35 years old is the 9th inning, and he's been worse in the past when he's had to pitch in the 7th or the 8th. But I still think the stuff is there enough times, if you can get the command under control, that he can be a useful reliever. He is still, even with these struggles, I think, one of the best 8 relief pitchers the Orioles have, and you want him on the team, and I still think he makes them better. But it just can't be in the 9th inning, and I think you have to take him out of a couple of high leverage roles, at least for now. Like, maybe you throw him in the 6th or 7th with a 2-run lead the next time you pitch him, right? If he's not going to go on the IL. Say, hey, we still are trusting you with a small lead, but it's not the 9th. Maybe it's the 7th. Just take a little pressure off him, see how he looks, see how the command looks, then go from there. And he had stretches with the Phillies last year where he struggled and then came back to being dominant. So maybe even if they make this move, maybe we get to July and he's looking so good that he's back in the closer role. That's certainly what I would think. Like in May, you're not going to make the decision that Craig Kimbrel isn't closing out any more games for you for the rest of 2024. You brought him in to be your Bautista replacement for a year. But I just think for now, closer by committee. You got enough good arms in that bullpen to do it. And maybe that means Kimbrel still gets a shot. He's part of that committee still. So maybe, especially if it's like a 3-run lead in the 9th inning, maybe you just give him one of those to maybe ease him back into that spot. He's part of the committee. But I don't think going forward that every 9th inning save situation is Craig Kimbrel's anymore. There's going to be some other names, I think, coming in the 9th inning. But the Orioles did not need Craig Kimbrel to try and protect a lead on Tuesday night because they did not score a run. Unfortunately, do want to quickly recap that Tuesday night loss to finish up the pod. That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. And that's where you want to be for daily fantasy baseball right now. You don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries, whether it is strikeouts, whether it's RBIs, whether it's first inning runs. You just take your pick of more or less. That's it. You go on Prize Picks. It's like Adley Rutschman hits more or less than 1.5 Friday against the D-backs. You take more, he gets a 2-hit game, you win money. It's that simple. And they've even got the NBA playoffs on there as well. And you can win up to 100 times your money. It's truly a fast and super easy way to play fantasy sports. It's that fun. And there's quick withdrawals as well if you want to get that money that you've won on Prize Picks. So do the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So as we finish things up today, of course, the Orioles got the huge, crazy, insane win that I don't want to talk about ever again on Wednesday night, somehow winning it in 12 innings to keep the sweepless streak alive and split the 2-game set with the Washington Nationals. And with that, just an insane win. Like, I still can't believe the Orioles found a way to win that game. I don't know what happened there, but they did. They are now 24-12 through 36 games in the season. Again, still unsure how they did it, but they found a way to win that game over the Nats, defeating Walgreens on Wednesday night. And the Yankees did beat the Astros, so the two teams still tied atop the AL East. But did want to quickly recap the Tuesday night game because, again, my apologies, just wasn't able to get an episode out for Wednesday, so did not recap the Orioles' Tuesday loss. But going to quickly do it here. 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 3-0 loss to the Nationals on Tuesday night that opened up this quick 2-game series. And the first thing you need to know is the Orioles offense it went missing. Just their second shutout loss of the season. They both come in the last week. Remember, did it last week against the Yankees as well. And the O's weirdly just had no answer for Trevor Williams. The veteran righty, he's been pretty good this year. He's got a sub-2 ERA, but he throws like 89. They didn't swing and miss basically at all. Just a lot of looking strikeouts. There was a big strike zone on Tuesday night. That played into it. Ryan O'Hearn got called out on a pitch that was a ball in the 9th inning and just let his frustration out. He got ejected. Brandon Hyde let his frustration out. He got ejected in the 9th inning on Tuesday night. It was a frustrating night where the zone just expanded for the Nationals and not really for the Orioles. Now, the O's could have still capitalized and hit some balls a little harder and put some more balls in play, but in general, just a flush at night, certainly for the Orioles offense. But the second thing you need to know from Tuesday is that the only time they really looked okay was against our old friend Hunter Harvey. And of course, they looked okay against him again on Wednesday with the 2-run homer from Mountcastle. But Westberg had a ground out against Harvey at 97 off the bat. Mullins singled at 106 off the bat. Kjerstad did strike out as a pinch hitter for Ramon Arias, but then Henderson ended the inning with a line out at 108. Of course, the Orioles didn't score. That was in the 8th inning, but that seemed like their best chance to score. It was really the only inning where they looked good offensively. Of the 9 that were shut out on Tuesday, they kind of, they know Hunter Harvey better than any other pitcher on that national staff. And they got to him a little bit. And as I said, got to him more on Wednesday night. Now, the third thing you need to know from the O's loss on Tuesday is that Corbin Burnes was great, just kind of couldn't finish up the great outing on Tuesday night. His final line in that one for the O's, 6 1/3 innings from Burnes, allowing 3 runs on 5 hits, 6 Ks and 3 walks, 95 pitches, just 4 hard hit balls, ERA at 2.83 for Corbin Burnes on the season. He was great. It was 6 innings, a 1-run ball. He was dominant through 6. I mean, he gave up a run in the second and then just kind of cruised after that, 17 whiffs. The slider was really good. The changeup was awesome. 5 whiffs on 9 swings by the Nats, mostly left-handed hitters against that changeup, one of the better changeups we've seen from Corbin Burnes this year. But it was also his second straight start where he got no run support. The Orioles' other shutout loss was last week against the Yankees when Corbin Burnes pitched. Command was a little off, though. Another start with 3 walks, just hasn't had the Brewers level command really consistently this year with the Orioles. And it was even his cutter. Like, that's his number 1 pitch. That's his bread and butter. The cutter was a little erratic. That was the first time we'd really seen the cutter be erratic, at least somewhat consistently throughout a start. Still pitched through it. They gave up those 2 runs, couldn't finish off the 7th. And one of the issues was, and the fourth thing you need to know from that loss, is that he did really struggle to hold runners in that game. And he struggled to hold runners at times this year. Multiple Orioles starters have. The Nats stole 4 bases on Tuesday night. 3 of them came off of Corbin Burnes. And for the second time this year, he threw over to first base for a 3rd disengagement. Remember, with the new rules that were put into place last year, you get 3 disengagements. If you don't pick off the runner in those 3, he gets awarded second base. He had already thrown over twice to first base, and he threw over again, didn't get him. And I believe it was Jacob Young who was just allowed to get to second into scoring position and then ended up scoring on a base hit. And Corbin Burnes actually talked to The Athletic earlier this season for a story him and other pitchers did that have actually done the 3rd disengagements multiple times, and just said, hey, essentially, I feel like it's worth it. I'm not super quick to the plate. It's worth it to try the pickoff. He's going to try to steal anyway. And those are guys who trust their stuff enough where it's like, whether the guy's at first or second, I'm going to get the hitter out and not allow the run to score. And that happened in the first 6 innings. Unfortunately, the Nats got a couple of dink and dunk hits in the 7th to bring home 2 more runs against Burnes. But generally, my take on it is, if you're that good, you don't need to hold runners that well, right? You don't need to worry about slide stepping or messing up your delivery or taking velo off your pitches because you're worried about the runners. Like, no. When you are as good as Corbin Burnes is, and you are a Cy Young level pitcher, just go at the hitter. If you give up a walk, a hit, and he gets to second on a stolen base, whatever, I trust Burnes to get the hitter at the plate and get out of the jam. And that's what he's mostly done this year. He will just generally be good enough that running issue won't hurt him. But of course, it's something throughout the rest of the season. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 3-0 loss to the Nats that opened up the series on Tuesday night is that the bullpen at least kept it at 3-0. The offense never helped him out, but Jacob Webb got some key outs. Keegan Aiken got himself out of a bases-loaded jam in the 8th inning on Tuesday, and a nice job by those two relievers who were both needed in huge spots again the very next night on Wednesday to somehow find a way to help the Orioles then come back and win that game Wednesday to not end the sweepless streak, split the series, and go into their off day with a victory at 24-12. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review. Looking for some reviews on Apple Podcasts. Haven't gotten some in a while. Would love to see your reviews of the podcast right there. It always helps out the show. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. We will be back tomorrow for one more episode this week. Of course, the Orioles are off Thursday, but I will get you the preview of the 3-game series between the Orioles and the Diamondbacks this week. And we'll do a little bullpen trust rankings for this week now that Craig Kimbrel is moving down that list, certainly to the bullpen trust power rankings and any more Orioles news and notes, especially with some pitching injuries that we will get to on tomorrow's show. Also, I will be at Checker Spot Brewing at 2 o'clock on Saturday before the Orioles game, actually joining the guys from Orioles on the Verge. They do a great minor league podcast over there. They're doing a live show from Checker Spot, which is pretty close to Oriole Park. It'll be at 2 o'clock before the game. So if you want to come out, see the live show, say hello, talk some Orioles baseball, I will be there. So make sure to come and check that out as well. But again, back tomorrow for one final episode this week. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.